Jake Knapp is the inventor of the design sprint and the New York Times bestselling author of the book Sprint. He's also the co-founder of Character, a venture fund for early-stage startups. How and why did you start using Miro?
I came from this position of thinking, I don't want to be doing stuff online, to thinking now when I do a sprint in person with a company, it's like, we're going to use Miro, even though we're all in the same room, because that's a better way for us to get this work done. As an investor, we're basically investing in their ability to solve problems. We're saying, we think this group of people is going to be able to solve a problem in a really great way and create value by doing it. And actually, you need to give people the tools that can help them make decisions, help them collaborate, help them visualize and see things in a different way. And Miro does all those things. So to me, at least as an investor, I'm thinking, give the team the tools that are going to help them think, that are going to make the most, brighten their skills as smart folks. And Miro is at the top of that list.
The mistletoe margarita, the Scrooge driver, the North Pole punch. The holidays call for cocktails, so get everything you'll need for them delivered with Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery. So
what's it gonna be?
Classics like Bullet Bourbon, Don Julio Reposado, or Kettle One, or maybe something new. Find it all on Drizzly, where you can get beer, wine, and spirits delivered for any holiday festivity. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations.
Welcome to Spotcast, episode number 8. My name is Tim Mitra, and I'm in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
And we also have Jonathan Kuline from Mississauga, Ontario.
Pleasure to be here.
Alrighty. Okay, so let's dive right into the fact check. So we're doing fact check for episode 4 of our podcast, right, Jonathan?
Episode 5? I want to say 5.
Let's do episode 5 instead of 4. Then.
Let's just jump at, episode 5. We're going to do episode 5. Not much this week.
Well, 5 is kind of short, so maybe we can do 5 and 6 and get almost caught up.
Hey,
what do you think?
Hey, I'm ready if you are. Again,
all right.
You guys are clearly, the game is stepping up here, so...
yeah, all right, okay.
All right,
give her.
Episode 5. So 320 in, you guys were asking about whether there were more than one woman on the bridge for the first episode of Star Trek. The first official episode of Star Trek, The Man Trap. Uhura was on the bridge, but not Janice Rand. So we have one woman on the bridge for the first episode. And yes, I did actually go back and watch the first episode just to confirm that. 2715, Jason Isaac's TV show set in the Middle East that Tim was referring to is called Dig.
That's right.
Dig. 2903, Vulcan martial art is Sus Mahana.
Sus Mahana, yeah.
Mana. And then Jaime was asking about the crimes that were committed by Tom Paris and Ro Laren. So I looked those up, and so I managed to piece those together. So 3635, Tom Paris was court-martialed by Starfleet after confessing to falsifying records regarding a shuttlecraft accident that killed 3 officers. He was a mercenary pilot working for the Maquis when he was captured by Starfleet, apparently on his first mission. He was tried and convicted of treason, and that's where we find him at the beginning of Voyager. Ro Laren was posted to the USS Wellington when she went on a away mission where she disobeyed orders, resulting in the death of 8 crewmen. She was court-martialed and imprisoned, and that's the crimes that they're guilty of.
Mm-hmm. So, but the Maquis was the name of the rebel guys that we couldn't remember the name of, right?
That's it.
Yeah, I thought Ro Laren was a Maquis.
I think she does actually at one point believe, maybe Jaime will have he's clearly got a better memory for this.
Yeah, that's in the 7th season. It's really close to the end where I think, again, she's sent on some sort of mission where she's supposed to infiltrate, and she ends up deciding to go with the Maquis.
Yeah.
She does a pretty good job of infiltrating Battlestar Galactica, too, if I remember correctly. No? You're not going to go there?
No, I don't remember. And it's kind of interesting between Tom Paris and Ro Laren. So from what I recall, I think Ro Laren's character was intended to be the Bajoran character on Deep Space Nine.
You're absolutely right. Yep. She was going to be the character that became Kira Nerys.
Mm-hmm. The character Ro Laren or the actress?
Well, they offered it to her, Michelle Forbes, the actress, and she didn't want to do it. So they decided to recast. And so they gave similar but not same backstory to the character who became Kira Nerys.
Kira, yeah.
Right. And Tom Paris is an interesting one, too, because he's played by, what's his name?
That guy from that show.
Tom Paris.
Something McNeil.
Robert Duncan McNeil.
That's the one.
Mm-hmm.
And his background, as just described here in the fact check, is very similar already to Nick Locarno, who was also played by the same actor.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a great episode, too.
That was the one where he tries to get Wesley and a bunch of other cadets in trouble?
Yeah, basically to cover up for something that he did that was,
Was it a shuttlecraft accident by any chance?
It was not, but it was similar, where they were going to do some sort of flight demonstration, and they were going to do this.
Yeah, they got a pilot crew trying to do a flyby maneuver or something.
Right. So I'm a little surprised they didn't just make him that same character.
Yeah.
All right.
We're all supposed to forget that was the exact same guy. And our last note from episode 5, 4716, Jodie Whittaker. You were fishing around for the name of the doctor, which you can be forgiven for, considering I know you're not a Whovian yet, so she'll be the 13th Doctor on Doctor Who starting Christmas, I guess, will be the first episode we'll see her in. Right,
and they're just named 3 new characters who are her quote-unquote, air quotes, friends, not companions.
I saw that, yeah. It's interesting that they're starting with that many characters right off the hop. But
right, yeah.
So do we want to jump right into the episode 6 fact check, since we're...
Yeah, let's do episode 6. So where are we getting more accurate or something? What's going on here?
Well, I think it also might be the fact that you have an on-the-fly fact checker checking things as we go.
True.
That might be helpful. Although that being said, we'll start with the first fact check on here, which is both you and I got this wrong. So we mentioned it last week's episode. The 823 into episode 6. The director of Blade Runner 2049 is Denis Villeneuve, not fellow Canadian Denis Arcand. So that was I'll mea culpa on that one, and I think Tim followed suit on me for saying that the first time.
Yep.
1450. Complete collector's edition Blu-ray set of Blade Runner contains 5 versions of the film. The final cut, the theatrical version, the international version, that's the one with the eye gouging, the director's cut, and a work print version of the film.
So the eye gouging is not in the final cut, for instance?
It's in the final cut, and it's in the, I think it's in the director's cut as well, but it's not the original theatrical cut, doesn't have that.
The theatrical version is the one with the
That's the voiceover and the happy ending, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it was on this podcast or another one, but I had heard that Terry Jones from Monty Python had written the voiceover parts, but it turns out I was wrong. It's written by another person, which you can fact check next week.
Woohoo! 2222, Security Chief Landry's rank on Star Trek Discovery is/was Commander, since she is no longer with the show. 2843, this was interesting. Takuvma's ship is never explicitly named so far in Star Trek Discovery. StarTrek.com refers to it as the Sarcophagus, which cool name. Of course, for a ship carrier.
Could be all the dead bodies on the front of it. Yeah. Very reminiscent of the Reavers, right?
Yeah. And 5114, the original Pacific Rim is set in 2025, and Pacific Rim Uprising, the new film that's coming out, is set about 10 years later.
Right. And that's somebody, what's Idris Elba's son, apparently, or the character, right?
Yep.
Is in the new one.
Yep.
So we're not going to get Charlie Hunnam, is it?
Hunnam.
Charlie? Or he's not going to be in it, I guess.
That's a good question. I must admit, I haven't looked at the list. I've watched the trailer, but
maybe he'll be the crusty old Navy guy that, hurls insults at them and stuff, right?
Yeah. Right. Like the movie Dodgeball, where he's like, if you can dodge a boulder, you can dodge a kaiju, sort of thing.
All right. And the last one, you're going to put that last one in there?
Is the last one yours?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think...
Oh, did I say this? No, this is mine from last week, right?
I think you might have covered this one, but we'll say it anyway. So Tim, he actually said the director's cut is his favorite version. The final cut of Blade Runner is actually his favorite.
That's true. That's true. But it's funny, having gone back in to watch Blade Runner a second time this weekend, I noticed that they really enhanced the sound in the final cut, and I got to see the final cut in the theater about 3 years ago, in a place with good sound. And the very first sound you hear in Blade Runner, the original one, is kind of a thump or a big crash, something heavy hitting the ground kind of thing, right? And that's the same sound you hear in spoiler for Jaime. Oh no, I ruined the very first second of the movie for him.
That was probably the key to everything too.
Yeah, totally, man. No, yeah. The only thing's missing from the new one is that green tree that the Lad Company tree that renders like a CRT screen. And the very I just every time I see that's kind of like when you see LucasArts or Lucasfilms, you kind of know it's going to say a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away soon, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas so for me seeing that tree render itself is sort of to me is the beginning of Blade Runner, even though it's probably used in 1,000 other movies too, or hundreds of other movies, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny how those little cues, we actually become pretty used to those familiar sounds. I still can't, when we go see the new Disney branded Star Wars films, I still want to say the rump bump, rump bump, rump bump. It just doesn't seem...
Did we get Tinkerbell at the beginning of those? I don't remember.
Yeah, no, they've been very good about just starting up with the Lucasfilm logo. They do not Disneyfy it. They don't put the Magic Kingdom in there, just because I think people would be shocked to see that.
Hurling popcorn at the screen.
Yeah.
So was that we're done fact check for episode 6 and 7? We're caught up?
We haven't done 7. We did 5 and 6.
7. Right. Okay. Sure. We'll save 7 for next week, right? No.
It's up to you. We can, if you want to just knock them all out. We only got 5 corrections.
What do you think? What do you think, Jaime?
It's only a few more. All right, let's catch up.
Let's do it. Okay, let's do it.
All right, here we go. Fact check episode 7. So 30 minutes, 43 seconds. The number on the hull of the title ship in Star Trek Enterprise is NX-01. The Enterprise from the original series and the first 3 theatrical films is NCC-1701. We were having a discussion about what the number is.
Yeah, A or B or whatever.
Yep. 3520. Transformers the movie I was using when I saw this as a child. It was August 1986, and I did actually see it when it came out in 1986. 4618. The group that rebelled against the United Federation of Planets by attacking the Cardassians is called the
Kardashians.
If only we could get them to attack the Cardassians.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is called the Maquis. We talked about that just in one of our corrections a minute ago. And 5110. Some of the holy books. We were talking about the holy books that you saw piled up there. I looked and I looked and I looked and I looked. The only 3 that I could actually confirm are the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran. I cannot find out what the other 3 books are. I've looked on so many websites this last week trying to find out what they are. I stopped short of falling back on my journalistic training to ask the people at the court office, but I didn't go that far.
Wow. So, I can verify or testify, I guess, that one of the books that somebody swore on was the Bhagavad Gita. That's the I don't know if it's an Indian holy book, but it's a book of Indian religion stuff, right? Hindu, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I didn't. So again, I didn't really know. And there was a couple of people swore on the Quran, and I don't remember. A couple of people asked for the Bible, but I don't know if there's clearly 2 Bibles here in this case, right?
Yeah, I don't know if there's an Old Testament, New Testament, and I don't know. Is there another version?
Well, I was raised Roman Catholic when I was a young child, so the New Testament was the quote unquote air quotes holy book for us, and the Old Testament was more Anglican, Protestant, or whatever you want to call those people, right?
Yeah.
Or the King James Bible, like I said last week.
Yeah, I still liked your idea of the Dianetics being one of the ones available. So.
Yeah.
55, our last correction of the week. The super buff Ricardo Montalban was 61 years old when he filmed Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, chest muscles and all.
Wow, yeah.
That's a buff 61-year-old dude.
Sure, for sure. All righty then. So let's move on to the FU. So Jaime, you have a small piece of FU here, which is maybe news to our fans. I don't know.
Yeah, it should be of interest. So it was announced that CBS will bring back Star Trek Discovery for season 2. That's not to be confused with the fact that season 1 is going to be split between 2 different years, where they're going to take a little bit of a break come sometime in November, and then they'll start right back up again in January. This is actually an additional season beyond the original planned episodes, so that's good.
Yeah, just I was going to skip ahead just to our some of the notes I gathered from Inner Space, which I watched, started watching this week. Apparently, an average of 1.2 million viewers per week in Canada are watching Star Trek Discovery on the Space Channel, and that's the most watched show in specialty TV history. Although I don't know what specialty TV history means, or specialty TV means, but I guess it's because it's like Home and Garden Network or Learning Channel or in this case Space, right?
Yeah. I don't think they're throwing down with the sports channels or CBC.
Yeah, they're not beating the Hockey Night in Canada kind of numbers.
Yeah, no, and I don't think they're beating the Tragically Hip special or any of the
right.
moments.
Yeah. Just for the perspective, Jaime, the Tragically Hip. What did we say? There was 34 million people in Canada right now, and something like 11 million of them watched the Tragically Hip show when it was first broadcast.
Yeah.
Wow. So one in every 3 Canadians was doing that.
They weren't even documenting that. That didn't take into account the people who gathered to watch it, who watched it together in bars and in their houses. That might be a conservative estimate for the number of people that actually watched it.
The place where they played was a small theater in Kingston, or a small arena in Kingston, and I think it had 6,000 seats in it, and there's a big sort of open area out in front of this place, and it was packed with like 10,000 people watching it on big giant monitors outside of the theater, right? So kind of a big deal.
I wonder what the American parallel. I was thinking about that. What would the American parallel be if
Barack Obama's?
What artist, what musician would move Americans to gather in that way if they knew that this was the last chance to see? Like I was thinking Springsteen. I don't know. Like I just don't know who has that resonance for an American audience.
Yeah, well, it's such a big country too, right? There's so many people out there.
Yeah, well, they do have 220 million more people than us, but yeah.
I think a lot of the ones who come to mind as people who could have done it have unfortunately passed away.
Yeah,
right? Like if you knew this is Michael Jackson's last one because he's going to die. Oh, unfortunately, like that would be one I think who would be equivalent in size.
Bowie and Prince, like people we've lost recently.
Yeah, but in retrospect, just coming back to Michael Jackson, people didn't really like Michael Jackson before he died. If you remember,
he still had a rabid fan base.
No, I know he had rabid fans, and like that. But at the time, he owed a bunch of people money, and it wasn't looking good for him, right? Yeah. It's hard to say who would be the draw. Freddie Mercury would have been another one like that, right? But of course, we didn't know he was dying at the time. Hard to say, eh?
Yeah,
I guess a Beatle.
And who goes out with that announcement too? Like who? Not only is it like hey, we're breaking up the band. Like maybe the Rolling Stones. They've been promising they're going to go away for 25 years now, but maybe they go on a final tour at some point. They're in their 70s. Maybe they're finally like, hey, this is really the one. Maybe there's that upswell of
but like your mom and your grandmother wouldn't necessarily go to that. You know what I mean? Like that's the difference between the hip in Canada and I mean like everybody went. Like kids went, old people. Like it was all generations were and this last week, just people doing tributes to Gord Downie. In fact, yesterday evening they had a big sing along with choir at Nathan Pope Square, which apparently filled the place up. Right?
It did.
So, it's crazy, man.
Yep.
Gord Downie for Prime Minister.
Well, I think we can say he was, he was Canada's poet. He loved this country in a very special way that resonated with us, and I think it clearly moved the country to know that he was going and then to say goodbye to him. So it's
sort of an odd, quirky kind of way. Like his poetry was it was off the wall in such a way that only Canadians Canadians get the humor, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Yep.
Anyway, that's quite the aside, but
Yeah. So the other piece was follow up here was for me was Starship Enterprise, and Jonathan kind of spoiled it for me because he just went through all that stuff in the thing back. But the idea of the Enterprise in Star Wars wrong show. Star Trek history. So the Enterprise was, of course, the non-powered flight of the space shuttle, the actual NASA space shuttle that they flew. They dropped it off a plane and had it land. It had no engines. Was the Enterprise. Yep. Never went into space, as it were, like the other five, I think, that they had. Hey, maybe you can fact check that one. And,
there's space, and then there's like deep space, which might be the difference.
That's true.
Didn't go into interstellar space.
Yeah, I mean like orbit to the space station and stuff like that, right? So because the Columbia, Discovery, Atlantis,
Challenger.
Columbia. Thank you, Columbia. No, I said Columbia already. Discovery. Yeah. What do you know? The show named after that. And then of course there's a fictional Enterprise from 2130, which none of us can be around to see if that actually comes to be. And then of course, like NX-01. Got a weird picture. That's the Jonathan Archer's Enterprise, right? Yep. And then 1701A was from when? Oh, the Voyage Home. And then the Excelsior one, the Excelsior retrofit, was the NCC 1701B. That's the one that, remember Scotty was like bad mouthing the Excelsior class, like, a few movies before. Yep. I guess Wrath of Khan maybe, right? Because Wrath of Khan was Search for Spock, where they had to go and steal an Enterprise. Enterprise.
That's right. And they hotwire and break the other one, right?
Right. And then there's one here from the Next Generation, I guess.
That's the one where we see it come through a wormhole and encounters the C versus the D, right? That's the
right. Yeah. Tasha Yar was on it. And
that's where we get the Tasha Yar Romulan character from.
Oh, is that? Oh, because she's the kid or
because
whatever?
She gets captured from the alternate timeline by the Romulans, and then Tasha from that timeline ends up with a Romulan who ends up having a kid who ends up being that kid that shows up.
Oh, really? Yeah. So that's how she had how she came back.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Also, Denise Crosby's film career tanked.
That's true. Oh, is that why she left the show?
But she thought she was going to go off to fame and fortune and didn't.
Be all that, yeah. So anyway, if you're interested, we'll put the link in the show notes. There's even more Enterprises to talk about there, because there's some more from other movies. There's also the Kelvin timeline Enterprises, which are the ones that are the J.J. Abrams universe, as we like to call it.
Yep.
So that's follow up on the Starship Enterprise, which, by the way, got a shout out in this particular episode.
Yeah.
Right? When Michael Burham refers to it as a Constitution, you can try and find a ship like a Constitution class like the Enterprise. So let's talk about spoiler warning. We're going to talk about episode number 6 now of season 1, episode number 6 of Star Trek Discovery, the episode called Lethe, I'm going to go with Lethe, Lethe, which is apparently the name of a character from the Dagger of the Mind, the one where in the original series, I think probably a 5th or 6th episode in, where they have a machine that can erase your brain on the prison planet, or the prison, you remember that one? Where Kirk gets put in the chair and they try and erase his brain? No,
it's not coming to mind. But I'm less familiar with if that was a TOS episode. I'm a little bit less familiar.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Anyway, so right off the bat, we meet Adjunct Vlatak, who turns out to be. We're making fun of this on just about every show I've seen so far has been making fun of it about the logic extremists, because that kind of that's like an oxymoron, right? Who think that Sarek's way of merging with the humans is bad for Vulcan lore and they should stay pure and all that kind of stuff. Just like, I don't know, every other civilization in Star Trek, it seems. So you guys want to jump in and do a recap or what? Anyone?
Sure. I thought you were starting it. Sorry.
Okay, well, I can continue. Yeah. So in the beginning, our newly found pal, Captain Lorca and Ash are, reenacting or practicing again, shooting Klingons on a fictitious bridge in the holodeck, which again didn't appear in the original series, which I'm going to scratch my head again.
Well, let's take a little segue on that one, okay? Because I've seen a lot of stuff on the interwebs, as they might call it, regarding this. So from what I recall from seeing in that episode, it seemed like it was a little bit much to call it the holodeck, because it didn't seem like it was quite as expansive. Right. It seemed like a shooting gallery that they were in that can simulate via holographic means certain things, but I think it looked like one of those like VR games I've played at conventions where you can only stay in this little square, and it looks like I'm playing like Doom or something, and it looks like I'm actually shooting things, but there's actually quite a bit of limitation. Like, I can't grab objects, I can't climb, mountains and that sort of thing. So I think that might be what it was, and I really hope they limit it to that, because then I'll just look really bad with this explanation.
All right. Anyway, so he kind of announces to him, Captain Lorca does, that he's going to make Ash chief of security, the new chief of security, right? And there's a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it. Where he asks him how many kills he had, and Ash says 22, and Lorca said 24, when in fact he actually shot 36. So
we can determine that Ash is either bootlicker or very good political,
or humble.
Yeah.
Humble.
Well,
yeah.
Doesn't want to show up the captain.
No. So this Vulcan faction is against this failed experiment that they call the Federation, which is what they say. And by the way, we get to meet Amanda Grayson for the first time, which is another Torontonian, Mia Kirshner, who knows? Jaime may be carrying a torch for her in no time at all, too.
Yeah, I a little bit, because, for a split second when they first showed it on the screen, I thought he was Amy Adams.
Oh, really?
Like your sister.
Yeah. So, General Cole. Now we meet General Cole again. Drawing a blank. That's a Klingon, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's the guy with the red makeup or
slash on his
down his eyes,
Yep.
from his eyes to like down his cheeks, I guess.
Yeah, what's our guy in Force Awakens called with the stormtrooper helmet with our hero? You know, the guy who at the very beginning, the one who doesn't want to be a stormtrooper anymore. Finn. Yeah. It's kind of, it reminds me of that with the sort of red streak across the face there. So
yeah, they haven't explained it, but I assumed it was some sort of like war paint is the equivalent that came to my mind.
War paint, or to some sort of tattoo or something. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. It's hard to tell because as far as I can remember, I don't remember seeing other Klingons with that, so it doesn't seem like it's necessarily something that everybody has.
Yeah. So and instead of on the holographic projection, we get to meet Admiral Catherine Cat Cornwall in the flesh, and of course, so does Captain Lorca. Right?
Yikes!
They do in fact meet, don't they?
In the flesh, yes. And then apparently there's a Vulcan expeditionary group. So the episode centers around the fact that Sarek gets blown up by this faction on his way to a peace treaty or talks at the Cancri 4 system with this adjunct Valak who blows himself up in order to sabotage the mission. And they have a little bit of a dialogue about it. But anyway, so because of Sarek having given Michael Burham part of his chakra, she kind of senses that he's in trouble and in peril and starts to have visions about this particular time when he was forced to make a decision, and he fabricates the truth in explaining to Amanda and Michael Burham that she didn't get picked for this Vulcan expeditionary group. So but we find out through later meetings with Michael Burham goes back into the chakra to try and figure out to try and get a hold of him and get him to wake up and turn on his beacon to be rescued, his emergency beacon, right? Yep. So so this we find out through the story that in fact he was meant to choose. He was given a choice between his completely human stepdaughter or ward and his half-human son Spock. Only one of them could go on to become part of this Vulcan expeditionary group, and in a moment of frailty, I would say, Sarek chooses Spock, and then Spock goes and does the typical teenage Vulcan son thing and goes off and joins Starfleet instead, right? So, so the angst here is that Sarek has had to, bury this conceit. That's the word I was looking for about Michael Burham not really being selected or even in the running.
Yeah, and they gave us a little bit of clarity on something that I was a little bit confused on from the first episode, where they show the attack on the learning center, like the school. I hesitate to call it a school because it seems like they're just like in a testing center of some sort.
Yeah. The little bubble things that they sit in.
Yeah.
That's their school. That's how they go to school.
Yeah, where it's like they're taking the SATs constantly, sort of thing. And we see the destruction, and Sarek ends up saving Michael Burnham's life as a child, and that plays into this episode with the what do they call it, the Katra link? Because I got confused because in that first episode it talked about the fact that her family was killed in a Klingon attack, and I just thought she was in another Klingon attack this time, like on Vulcan or something, because it was so close. But in this case, it turns out no, it was the Vulcan extremists who had attacked the school, presumably because she was there, right? So it was a terrorist attack.
Yeah, another one, I guess, too, right? Maybe the same faction or something, or a similar faction,
right?
Who knows? Maybe it was those guys from the Orville, since they had the week off, they came and decided to attack.
Well, my mind immediately went to the character from Star Trek 6, right? In Star Trek 6, we have this Vulcan who allies herself with, aliens, in her case, who wants to follow the logical path because she thinks that peace with the Klingons is the wrong way to go.
Right.
It's, again, that sort of taking logic to its extremes kind of viewpoint. I wonder if they're going to draw any parallels there.
So Star Trek 6 is the undiscovered country you're talking about,
I am, yes. The Kim Cattrall character.
Which is one of my favorite Star Trek movies.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah. I love the Christopher Plummer line, who is Canadian, by the way. When he says you have to listen to Shakespeare in the original Klingon. Yeah. I love that line.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't like the part where they were on the penal colony and all that kind of stuff, but I really liked the character played by another Canadian who played Vulcan. What's her name?
Kim Cattrall.
Cattrall, yeah. Kim Cattrall playing
Valeris.
Valerin?
Valeris.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they actually included that character because they wanted it to be Sarek, the character they established in the previous films. But when they wanted it to be that character, they offered it to the actress who had played that part. She did not like that idea. They actually offered Cattrall the role of Sarek. She would have been the third person to play that movie in three movies. So they decided, you know what, let's just create an entirely new character for that one too.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I think the highlight of the episode for me was definitely the disco t-shirts.
Yeah, which I think are available on StarTrek.com's shopping site, if I'm not mistaken.
If they are not, they are really missing an opportunity, because the number of people I saw on social who were like, where can I drop my money down for a disco t-shirt? I gotta have one of those. But, you know, that's one of those nerd traps, you know? If you get one of those shirts, sure enough, people are just going to think you're a disco fan.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just subversive enough, and it becomes sort of an icebreaker for people to be like, well, why are you wearing a disco thing? Is disco coming back? Are you into disco? What's going on?
Yeah, I think, again, let's see here, shop.startrek.com. I think we've got it here. Let's see what a disco t-shirt runs you.
I bet you they're like $24.95 or $29.99.
They are $26.95. They split the difference for you, Jaime. They're $26.95 American, so they'd be a little bit more for Canadians, but they do have the crests on the shoulders and the official Star Trek label inside. So all it says is disco and the trademark logo.
Cool. Hopefully they're of a nice quality.
Yeah, what I want to see is them expand right into the running line, because, you know, I thought Burnham and Tilly were making that look good. They were out there doing their exercises and having, you know, life lessons as they go. That was good.
Now, I wrote down, may fortune favor the bold. Is that something that Lorca says at some point during the show, or was that Sarek?
I don't remember that part.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that was either. It almost sounds like an episode title too. You know, we kind of we hinted at the fact that Lorca got together with the Admiral because they have a past. We didn't go that much into sort of what ended up happening there, right? Where she's obviously concerned about him both as a friend and as her superior, kind of wondering, like, all right, like, are you really okay? Like, you've gone through a lot of traumatic stuff recently, and she kind of suspects that he's not quite ready for command again, regardless of what the psychiatric evaluations say.
And he faked it or something.
Well, he interrupted it with a bottle of scotch and a knowing wink to try and get her into bed. He sort of disrupts it with, you know, hey, I'll look cute and Jason Isaacs like at you, and of course they end up rolling in the hay, and then it's not until she reaches over at one point and she sees the scars all over him. She goes to touch one of them, and of course he freaks out, jumps up and pulls a phaser on her and makes her realize, okay, this guy's got some serious, you know, post-traumatic stress going on, and justifiably so, having to previously, as we established last week, you know, he mentions that he had to kill his entire crew to avoid capture by the Klingons.
Klingon torture, yeah.
And the thing that triggers her appearance, she says, is that she questions the fact that he appointed Burnham to the team. That's the thing that really, you know, how could you bring a mutineer on board your ship and give her a position? And so that's why she comes to investigate. And then, of course, when he flips out, she says, well, that's it for you. I'm going to find a way to get you off the ship. You're not going to be the captain anymore.
Right. And then conveniently, Spock or Sarek can't go to the peace talk. So I guess she's the only senior Federation person around. So he sends her willingly off to the talks. And then when it turns out that it's a trap and she gets captured, he doesn't do what he normally does, which is rush in and save her. He kind of goes, you know, maybe we should wait for orders from Starfleet, which clearly, I mean, people were guessing about that, but I think definitely he's playing his hand here, right? By getting her out of the way too, right? Perhaps. Yeah.
The only way that could have been more overt is if he'd given her a red shirt as a parting gift.
That's true.
That was my thought too. I was like, oh, she's dead for sure. I didn't know how. I was like, oh, she is dead for sure, like in a shuttle accident or something.
But did you think that when as they were leaving, kind of thing?
I don't remember the exact sequence. I don't think they'd had Sarek yet by that point, or they hadn't mentioned that he was unable to continue his duties.
No, they did. They did at that point. They had established that she was going to have to go in his stead, and she basically said, when I get back, we're going to have to talk about how we're going to phase you out as captain. He was like, yeah, have a nice flight. Here's this red shirt. Out you go.
Yeah. Speaking of red shirts, though, by the way, there was a Trontonian named Nick Stojanovic. Yeah, Nick Stojanovic.
There was like a kicker in the NFL named Stojanovic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's similar name. It's Stojanovic. Anyway, he was wearing a red shirt on the Detmer, and I think he's one of the people that didn't make it back. So this is, we talked about that, jokingly, and I think the Detmer was that episode where they found Kitty Cat, right?
Yep.
A tardigrade. Yeah, so that was a Torontonian actor who probably, could use the shout out, I guess.
So last week we talked about, you and I, Tim, we had a discussion about, how we were supposed to interpret Lorca's actions when he ditches Harry Mudd and leaves him behind on this Klingon ship to be tortured. And we've already established the Klingons are pretty savage in that way. They torture their prisoners. They kill people who cross them. And we were trying to figure out whether Lorca is a bad guy or if this is just supposed to be, a dark turn. This is how a captain acts in time of war. But I think after seeing this episode where he sort of goes off and, clearly is more than happy to not go rescue the Admiral after quite happily sending her off into a war zone, I think there's very little doubt about what kind of person Lorca is now. I think the mystery is gone and we're dealing with a bad guy.
You think?
I do.
Like a bad guy we're supposed to love and respect?
No, I don't think so. I think he's played his heel card at this point. I mean, we already established that he's sort of got that, I do anything to win kind of attitude. But in this case, that it's now turned into a mania. He's willing to basically, take the chance that the Admiral's going to get killed, tortured, or otherwise, just because he wants to protect his command, because he thinks that's the best way to win the war is if he's in command.
So what does that say about our hero Michael Burham, who's been, put on this redemption arc by him, pretty much, right?
Well, and that's going to lead to more questions for her, I think.
Yeah, for her to ask, or for questions about her.
Well, she's already run up against it last week in the previous episode where she was trying to reconcile, can we continue to torture this poor tardigrade in order to keep the spore drive running? And she makes the decision to set the tardigrade free. As we start getting into more and more, we'll call them ethically questionable behavior by the captain, you have to ask yourself, she ran afoul of her previous captain when she tried to do what she thought was the right thing and question her captain's behavior and tried to mutiny, basically. And so now she's going to be put in a situation where she's going to be probably having to face off against this captain making questionable decisions that she may not agree with. So we have to ask what she's going to do now.
Yeah, and it's all based on bad advice she gets from Sarek.
Yeah, who is not going to win any Father of the Year awards anytime soon.
No.
So I view the two, and I do agree that Sarek turned heel, as you mentioned there, sort of from wrestling days when Hulk Hogan, the hero, became Hollywood Hogan and went from a face to a heel.
That's it.
I think Michael Burham and Gabriel Lorca are going to be essentially two halves of the same coin here, where they're going to be joined at the hip, where they're both fundamentally broken people, but they're broken in different ways, right? So she has all sorts of trauma from her past and losing her parents and growing up in a Vulcan society that says, hey, why don't you suppress all those terrible emotions you feel? That's a good idea. And that, comes out when it comes to the Klingons. And I think it'll be her redemptive arc that sort of parallels, but is yet the opposite of Lorca's, where, he's brought in as sort of he plays by his own rules, but he's basically a good guy. He wants to win the war. And I think he'll just get darker and darker and make ever more and more kind of decisions that are doing the right things for the wrong reasons, right? I don't think he necessarily any other choice would want the Admiral to be out or die or whatever. But it was if you look at my logic of we need to win this war, the only way you can win this war is if the Discovery is doing all that it can. And it can only do all that it can if I continue to be the captain of this ship. Yeah,
that's unhealthy egomania is what that is.
Right. And so, Michael Burham, you mentioned the tardigrade, right? Where she is sort of doing, in many respects, the opposite of what she was doing before, where she was full on willing to mutiny against her own captain to try to attack the Klingons first for what she believed was the right reasons. And here she has an opportunity with the tardigrade. They could have just kept on torturing that thing. It was a necessary evil for the war is the way that even Saru was looking at it, right? When he wanted to get the captain back. I'm not saying I agree with that point of view, but I could understand how people might say, hey, this one entity that we're not even really sure exactly what it is. It's not like a person per se. It's not obviously, talking back to us or screaming and saying, please, stop torturing me. You can see how people might say, well, look at how many other individuals we'll save. We'll save billions by, using this creature to full effect.
Yeah. And the old ends justify the means argument is just never going to go well. Times of war or otherwise, that attitude has been used throughout history to justify unconscionable actions. And in this case, they're talking about torturing a sentient creature. And, again, Lorca's shown he's a willingness to, commit, some pretty questionable acts in the name of, well, it's for the greater good.
Right. Right.
But it's interesting though, I know you guys are jaded by you're influenced by your following Picard and Riker and that kind of stuff. But keep in mind that, Admiral Kirk has always tried to undermine his orders and get back into the captain's chair, quote unquote. That's sort of his modus operandi for the whole of the Star Trek, original series team, if you want to call it that, right?
Yeah.
And Lorca's sort of the same way. It seems to be that there's some sort of possession with the ship or the captain's chair that runs through these two characters, right? So there's a parallel there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But Janeway's not like that, and Cisco's not like that with Deep Space Nine, and at least I don't think he was, right? And Picard certainly isn't, right?
Yeah, yeah. And maybe we've just had a run of sort of that, nobler, higher class. I mean, this gets back into the discussion I think we sort of touched on a little bit about, dark Trek, as we start getting into this world where, I found the parallel I was thinking about last week, after we had our discussion was, it's the Jason Bourne, James Bond effect. So James Bond has a certain levity to it, all the way up until the Pierce Brosnan era where,
right,
it has, action, it has violence, it has, suspense, but it's always got this sort of sense of humor. It's got this playfulness to it. And then we get the Jason Bourne films. And the Jason Bourne films just take that spy thriller to a different place where it's real and it's grounded and it's gritty. And of course, those are wonderful films. But then we end up with the newer generation James Bond films, and we end up with, again, a much more gritty, grounded, less playful, more intense kind of thing. And I just can't help but think, since the last time we had Star Trek on the air, went off the air, what was it, 12 years ago? We've gone through a whole era of sci-fi that has been real and grounded and dark and full of anti-heroes and questionable behavior, and really got into, morals and ethics and decision making and grounded in, and like we talked about before, grounded in reality based on, war and torture and policy and all these different things. It makes me think about, well, is this just what 12 years of no Trek and then Trek gives you? Is it that dark reflection? Yeah. Are we in the mirror universe? What happened here?
I guess. Well, so I mean, like to that point, I mean, Star Trek's always sort of been an ivory tower. I mean, the original series was the ivory tower from the point of view that, they had the prime directive and they weren't trying to interfere, and yet they were trying to spread democracy in the American way across every society they ran across. And then when you get to the Picard era, Next Generation, they're so ivory towerish, it's practically up their butts, right?
Yep.
The first couple of seasons of Star Trek are pretty dry, right, from that perspective. And it's not until they get out and you get characters like Quark or Q. Q was a great character too, right?
Sure.
Because they just turned it on its head every time he showed up, right? So even Voyager was kind of, squeaky clean in a certain sense, right?
Yeah, although they made those, some of those more questionable decisions based on, hey, if we're trying to get home, when we make questionable decisions to get ourselves home, they start on a very altruistic path of, we'll do no harm, but then they do make some decisions that are a little, sketchier as they go. But, the thing that I loved about Trek, and the thing I love about Trek to this day, compared to so many other science fictions, was that it did have itself, it envisioned a better state for humanity that led to a better state for humanity's role in the universe. It wanted to envision a better future for humanity. We've risen above our own personal squabbles. We've managed to get our stuff together here on the planet and actually get out there and start, exploring the world, exploring the universe. I like the idea that we had risen above, whereas, this feels like we're getting back into the muck a little bit, again, I'm not gonna, just sit here and fill the show full of holes. I enjoy it. I think it's really interesting, but I don't know. I think I had gotten used to this universe being more hopeful. And this feels like it's a little, I think Jaime mentioned it a few episodes ago, that arc on Deep Space Nine where they went to war with the Dominion and things got dark and real, and you saw this sort of, what would it be like if this sort of, spacefaring, adventuring group of scientists had to really dig in and fight a war. And that was really interesting. And this feels a little more rooted in that of, hey, this is, put sciences on hold. We're going to do what we need. And maybe that's what we're supposed to take from this. But yeah, it feels, in a 2017 that has been dark in the real world, maybe I wanted a little more hope from my Trek. Maybe I wanted a little more, a little more Ivory Tower. And maybe that's why I think all three of us are responding so well to the Orville, is that maybe it's giving us that Trek that we were looking for.
Yeah. What was I going to say about that? It's the Walking Dead influence on this type of thing, right? Because it's not, the whole premise behind this is that they can tell these long arc stories that will take a whole season to flesh out, right? Rather than, having a problem or resolving it in 40 minutes, right? Which is kind of where the Orville is right now, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's no sort of, each story is episodic, and it should be, ingested in one sitting, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, this thing, we need to keep coming back in this sort of serial adventure to find out what is really going to happen with Cornwall and with Volk and Lorca and Burnham and Tilly and
we talked last week about the Netflix model, right? So here in Canada it's airing on Space Channel, in the United States it's on CBS All Access. The rest of the world's getting this on Netflix. I really do wonder how this experience will be taken in when you can just sit down and watch the entire season of this in one go on Netflix.
Well, are they getting it now, or are they getting it all?
I think they're getting week by week, the same way they're doing some of the CW shows and some of that other content. I think they're doing week by week.
Right. It's also on Crave TV here in Canada, by the way.
Okay. So again, it does make me think, like, I wonder how this will bear out, because we're watching it week by week, and that's giving us time, just like Game of Thrones, right? We're getting it week by week and really having to think it through.
Yeah.
When we're used to this instant model where you're like, hey, here's 14 episodes of Daredevil. Here's 14 episodes of Jessica Jones. Here's 14 episodes of Luke Cage. I wonder, once you get that whole run of this series, if it'll read completely differently, if you're actually just going back to back to back on this for your first view, as opposed to watching it week to week to week.
Yeah. It's one of the things I think about a lot is how many people do you think actually just sit down and binge these shows, right? I mean, Jaime, you talk about doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like with spending a weekend with you and your girlfriend, just absorbing some stuff, right? Rather than letting it process for over a period of time, right? It's like a difference between reading a book and watching a movie, right? In a movie, you get it all at once, and it's quick and painless. And with a book, you have to sort of, find the time to read it and pour through it. And they talk about the patina on the doorknob as the person reaches to open the creaky hinge, and you don't get that in a movie, right? Yeah, so it's all about creaky hinges.
Can I ask just one more thing? And we didn't get into it last week, but I kind of want to get your take on this, and I really want to get Jaime's take on this. But so Ash Tyler, spy?
Yeah,
spy.
So we already said spoiler warning, so that's good. Now I think we're going into speculative warning.
Oh, okay,
so we don't know for certain.
I gave you guys a heads up last week when I literally, this is like what going to see a movie with Jonathan is like. You'll go, oh my god, the big reveal happens, and you look over at him, he's like, an hour ago I figured that out.
Yeah, I'm very similar. I do the same things, and sometimes I'll like write it down.
Yeah,
and then bring out the papers, like, see, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen based on what I saw there.
The number of times I wish I'd had that with me, Jaime, where I could just say, at this time I wrote this down. It infuriates Tim and my wife to no end that I
okay, so spy for who?
Klingons. I got that vibe when he was on the ship with Lorca, when he was on the torture ship with Lorca, and the way that he's sort of ingratiated himself with Lorca, and he's gotten himself into this key position. And he mentions when he's on the prison ship that the way that he survived was that the Klingon took a liking to him, and that means they spent lots of time together. And I started finding myself thinking, well, okay, so there's a couple of possibilities. One, he's an altered Klingon, or two, that he's been in some capacity.
No, well, I mean, if Harry Mudd could have a relationship with the Klingons that's somewhat congenial in terms of having relationships with Klingons, could be, right? Then clearly Ash could too. You're totally right. And if I like when Lorca first gets thrown into the pen, Ash Ash isn't in the pen with them, is he? Like, I don't remember him.
No, he is. He is. Oh no, they bring him in. You're right. No, they do. They bring him in. It's just the one guy lying on the floor and Harry and Lorca, and then they bring Ash.
Right.
So who knows where he was and what he was being set up for? I just I don't know. He's giving me a hinky vibe. I don't know how to put my finger on exactly what it is, but it seems like he's been contrived to be in all these convenient ways exactly what Lorca was looking for. He was looking for a Starfleet officer he could trust. He was looking for a guy who could fill the security role. He was looking for, maybe I've just watched too much TV, but I just find myself looking at him thinking spy.
Well, and now when you see his relationship with Michael Burham, like in this last episode, sticks his hand out in her face, like the smarmy salesperson kind of guy, right? Like trying too hard, right?
And again, maybe I should be taking it at face value. Maybe it's just my experience as, maybe I'm just not a trusting person, but I just found myself thinking, I keep my eye on the guy who was that long in the custody of the Klingons. I don't know that I'd be handing him a phaser and telling him to stand next to me, quite as readily as I think Lorca is. But then Lorca, again, we've already established, he's a means to an end kind of character. He's thinking, this guy, you know what? He had my back on the Klingon ship. I think I can trust him. I need a guy to fill this role. In the same way that he's willing to take a chance on Burnham, I guess he's just like, hey, this guy fits the mold, but maybe that's naive.
Right. Well, listen, we really need to get to our picks, or pick, if you want to call it that. So can we just spend the next 10 minutes or so talking about the trailer?
Oh, yes.
Trailer.
We've been waiting for weeks to do this.
Yes. Time, eh?
Yeah, the trailer for Star Wars The Last Jedi kind of came out inconveniently for our production schedule, because I think we had a rather filled episode, and then I was gone for the next one. So yeah, I think by now, hopefully people have seen it. We probably have it in the show notes before, and if not, we can probably put it again if you can find it on YouTube. Seems like a pretty interesting sort of setup here, and there are definitely parallels, at least from the way the trailer is constructed.
Right. Yeah.
Very Empire Strikes Back sort of style, similar to the way that The Force Awakens, at the very least, mirrors a lot of what's going on A New Hope.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I know some people have criticized the Force Awakens for sort of reflecting off of A New Hope, right? Because it's practically the same plot as what they say. We all know it isn't really, but and the scenes that we've seen of this, the Jedi training, these mysterious quotes that they have Mark Hamill saying in the voiceover. Mind you, he was a voiceover in the original trailer for Force Awakens, even though he wasn't really in the movie at all, right? Didn't have a spoken word. Mm-hmm. But and sort of the way they look upon Doom with Carrie Fisher playing Leia, right? The fact that they kind of almost imply, like, if you were to say, okay, what is this movie going to be about based on what you've seen in the trailer? What's our friend's name? Ben. Kylo Ren. Yeah, Kylo Ren's clearly got on a mission to clear his emotional connections to the universe away. Got rid of his father in the first one. Spoilers for you if you haven't seen that one. But it's so now he's got to come after his mother, who happens to be a high-ranking general in the rebellion army, right? So rebellion, whatever they call
Resistance.
Yes,
is how they confusingly called it in this one.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, the Resistance.
Okay, all right.
Not to be confused with the Republic.
They're just going to throw more R's at us every time,
right? Or the Maquis, even. Yeah. So, what do you think, Mr. Jonathan Kuline?
I think the part that really, so many cool things. I mean, it was a great trailer. I love that it didn't spoil. I don't know what the movie's about. I love that I don't know what the movie's about. So many trailers are terrible. They give away too much. This one gave me exactly what I wanted. A bunch of really beautiful Star Wars world visuals, beautiful contrast, the colors, the contrast of Rey and Kylo. I thought that was great. Some nice little teasers for these little bits and pieces. But I don't feel like I don't know what Finn's up to. I don't know what Poe Dameron's up to. I don't know, beyond the fact that I get that, eventually Luke must train Rey in some capacity, which I think we could have put two and two together on without even seeing a trailer on this. I don't feel like I know what's going on, and that's great. I'm really excited about the fact I'm going in. But my favorite part of that trailer, beyond a screaming porg, my favorite part of that trailer is a line that I'm sure Mark Hamill is delivering to me and not Luke Skywalker delivering to everybody. And it's when he says, "This is not going to go the way you think."
Oh, really? Yeah.
And he's clearly speaking to, someone who is, is either Rey when he's trying to get her to help, get him to help her, or he's speaking to, Kylo when he's confronting him or something. But I love the way that they phrase that in there, because they're showing you all these visuals and they're showing you these things, and some of them are clearly fake out. Some of those scenes do not line up the way that they've got them cut, but it's really good. It's really good editing. But I found that to be a really telling statement where it almost feels like misdirection, which is fantastic. Like, I want that. I'd rather have that than be like spoon fed every little detail. And, I feel like there's so many movies I don't need to go see, like I feel like I've watched Thor Ragnarok already,
right. Yeah.
It looks funny and I'm sure it's going to be a great movie, but I've already seen 20 minutes of footage, but by the time you add all the trailers together and teasers and little bits and pieces, Star Wars, I've seen, just little snippets and little amuse bouches, I just want like a little taste. Right, yeah, oh, hey, they've done something funky with the AT-ATs. Oh, hey, look, there's Poe Dameron. He's got this badass rocket on the back of his X-Wing. Oh, hey, cool. Their snowtroopers are back. Kylo's got a lightsaber. Luke's hand is all, mechanical again. The books, what are the mirrored books on the shelves? It's all these little sort of, it just raises questions. It's tantalizing. I love it.
Sure, and it's also the lightsaber that he lost in Empire Strikes Back. Absolutely. When he got his hand cut.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that his father used to smite a bunch of small children once.
That's true. Yeah. Clearing out the decks.
We saw Phasma come back. A little taste of everybody. Some weird looking crystal foxes and stuff. You nailed it. Leia looks like bad things are headed her way. Rey at one point maybe being tortured or something. Like lots of little scenes where you're like, what's going on? I got to go see this movie. Why isn't it December 15th yet?
Yeah. And who's our arch enemy that Andy Serkis plays? Snoke, and we see him in the flesh too, right? He's actually in the room.
Yeah,
right?
we actually seems like we get a glimpse, and it looks an awful lot like, from the way they've cut it, it looks like maybe he's the one doing the torturing on Rey at one point.
Right. Yeah.
So an interesting, makes you wonder how that comes to pass. I'd like to see how all that pieces together. And yeah, I mean this is exciting. I think this was the perfect amount of trailer. I hope that there aren't a deluge. I'm sure there will still be TV commercials and stuff, maybe a few more scenes here and there, but I think this is the perfect amount of Star Wars to get me ready for more Star Wars.
Sure. Let me ask you a quick question. Which is your favorite trailer of all the Star Wars that you've seen?
Favorite trailer?
That's an interesting one.
See, I know what mine is.
Okay, so granted, I'm not sure if I've seen like the actual original trailers beyond the first one for the original Star Wars, A New Hope, which is a terrible trailer, by the way.
Yeah. Save your corner.
But from the ones I can actually remember, I think I like the, oh heavens, this is going to be hard because episode 1 definitely started the whole like teasers upon teasers, and then the official ones. So I'm probably going to mess this up. I think it's the first official trailer for The Phantom Menace is like fantastic. Like that really gets you pumped for a movie. And then,
what do you think, John?
I really like the very first teaser for Phantom Menace, where it throws you a bunch of visuals but gives you nothing. I thought that would, again, in retrospect, I thought that was going to be an amazing movie just based on the trailer. So again, it was just these little tastes of Star Wars where you're like, holy man, I can't believe Star Wars is back. They're going to do the prequels. This is going to be amazing. Now, little did we know what we're going to get really was Misa really make bad characters.
Misa tell you what's going to be.
But boy, that trailer where they start with that steamy scene where they're in the jungles on
in the fog,
and oh man,
that's the thing what I'm thinking of as well.
Yeah, that was the teaser trailer, Jaime. Yeah.
Oh, was it a teaser? See, this is where I got confused because they've had so many, and then there's like the first TV spots that'll be 30 seconds and so on. I think a close number 2 is I think it's the first full trailer for The Force Awakens, the one where they have Han Solo and Chewbacca come out.
Yeah, Chewie, we're home. Yeah.
Where everybody started doing these YouTube reaction reaction videos of like people being excited when that moment happened. They spliced in Matthew McConaughey's character from Interstellar, where he's, spoilers for that movie, by the way, he's watching, videos from like his children that have sent him stuff while he's in space, and he's like crying and watching the trailer and crying.
Yeah. Did you guys see the never-ending Porg memes online this week?
No.
I don't know if I've seen the same ones, but I've seen so many different Photoshopped variants that people have.
Social media had so much fun with the Porgs this week. The best one, my favorite one, was the one where they weaved the Porg into Donald Trump's hair. Oh, it's just so good. But there was a whole huge series of people just could not resist, because they are polarizing little beasties already. People.
Where did the Porg come from? I mean, are they from the cartoons or something?
No,
or?
I think the idea is that they're supposed to be indigenous to the planet Octo, I think it's called, that Luke's on. And because you see them on the Millennium Falcon, you see them with Chewie. I think they're supposed to have been on that island that they're on, and they somehow end up on the ship, and they end up coming with them. And
so they're the 2017 Ewoks?
Yeah,
or are they the Tribbles?
It's a funny thing, if you remember how we all felt when we saw BB-8 in that first trailer for Force Awakens, I think there was an immediate, oh my God, R2-D2 and a soccer ball had a kid, and I don't know if I'm into this. I think we were all really hesitant, but he was charming. Like, undeniably, that character was really likable. He was just enough, Now, he wasn't cloying. He was just kind of fun. He has got the lighter. I mean, it was fun. I'm reserving judgment on the Porgs because of how well they managed BB-8. They didn't ram it down your throat. Yes, it was clearly a merchandising play. How many BB-8 toys did they sell? Of course. They're going to sell Porg toys. I saw Porg toys when I was out with my kids the other day. They're already selling Porg toys, and they're going to do lots of that. Really? And lots of people are going to want Porg toys. But maybe they'll just give us a little soupçon of Porg, and we're not going to get buried in them like we did Ewoks and Jar Jar and, some of these other choices they've made. So maybe it'll be okay. But then we thought Phantom Menace and some of those prequels are going to be okay. So
right. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Yeah.
I had a pick this week. I have a book.
Oh, did you? Well, you can still go. There's still time. Get your pick in.
I got a pick. So in honor of the return of The Walking Dead this week, and its 100th episode, if you can believe it, the 100th episode was the first episode that aired on Sunday. Not necessarily their best episode, but it was the 100th episode. So Image Comics has been doing this series inside of a magazine they publish monthly called Image Plus, and it's been called The Walking Dead Here's Negan, and it is the origin story of Negan, the character that is being played on The Walking Dead for the last season plus. So they actually give you this, they've been giving it to you in 5 pages a month, and it took like 10 or 11 months for them to get this whole story out. So I've been reading it in the serialized form, as comic nerds like me do. But they've just released a collected edition. So if people want to cut through all that and they just want to get the collection, the Who is Negan collection, Here's Negan is what's called, has just arrived in stores, I think this week. And for $20, you can find out in this lovely little hardcover, you can find out where he got the name Lucille from, or his bat.
I know where you got it.
You can find out where the bat came from. You can find out where the barbed wire comes from. You can find out what he did for a living. You can find out where he gets the jacket. You can find out how he amasses his troops. You can find out when he meets some key characters. It's really good. It's really interesting to see somebody. I mean, we start with him in the pre-Walking Dead world, and we get a taste of who he was and what kind of person he was before, and we get to see how he ends up as this, hard as nails, charismatic but clearly psychopathic character that we're now seeing antagonizing Rick and his group in The Walking Dead, and it's really well worth a read. For the nice thing is, even if you're not up to date on The Walking Dead comics, this story stands alone. You could read this and you would not need to know what's going on in the continuity of the comics, which are significantly ahead of where we are in the TV show. It's just a great read for anybody who's a fan of this stuff.
Cool. So let me guess, he's a physics teacher, right?
Well, you're close. He is a teacher. I'll leave it at that. And that's
high school or grade
that's
school?
Not too hardcore a spoiler, because that's actually right at the very, very beginning of the book. But he is. I wouldn't be a big surprise to tell people that he was a teacher.
Really?
But a very interesting, especially the way they unfolded it over those, serialized stories to really give you these little tastes of it paced it out, which actually felt like you were traveling through his timeline from going from a regular person, more or less, to becoming this monster who he becomes, who bashes people's brains in with the baseball bat. It's
well, he doesn't have to bash their brains in to be a monster. I mean, seriously,
we established in the show, he tortures people, he takes their wives away.
He's a great manipulator, right? That's what's evil about Negan, is not so much the physical, it's the emotional abuse that he hurls on people. Right?
Yeah, and it's funny because he gets portrayed in the show, in the comic very much the same way as the show. He's funny and he's charismatic and he's charming and he's got this way about him that makes him, he's got that smirk and the smile that's, it's a little bit compelling while at the same time being creepy as hell. Obviously captured really well on the show, brought to life. But in the comics, he's got that same charisma where you sort of find yourself, both alternately, thinking like, it'd be a shame if this guy, gets his brains blown out, because he's a very likable and his villain kind of character. And Jeffrey Dean Morgan, of course, he's just drowning himself in this character. He's having so much fun being this huge bugger.
So I have a spoiler question. Jaime, have you seen much of Negan so far?
Only a few bits, and I think the main scene I remember watching, because it was randomly on, probably it was one when AMC was doing its holiday marathon, so I think I turned it on at some point and then saw a couple episodes. I think it's where they first go to his, camp or fortress compound, whatever it is, and he's explaining that, like, if you just say, say that you are Negan, you can live like a king, otherwise bad things happen to you.
Yeah.
And it seemed fairly reasonable. I was like, yeah, dude, I'm totally saying I'm Negan. That's not a hard choice at all.
Well, he's asking people to give up their free will, right? Basically, you are whatever I say you are. You are me. I ask you to do something. I'm not asking you. You are me, and you'll do what you're told. It's it's a pretty dark, a dark world that this guy has envisioned for his future in this, post-apocalypse. But he really goes some interesting places. I can't say I encourage you to watch it, Jaime, because last season had some really dark turns, and it was hard to watch at times. It felt a little torture porny, but then again, Jeffrey Dean Morgan is a really terrific actor. I've actually had the opportunity to interview him before, and he's undeniably likable as a person. He's undeniably enjoyable as this character, and it's hard not to watch. You just kind of want to see what somebody this twisted and full of himself is going to do next.
Yeah. I thought when I first saw him on the show, I thought, I'm done watching the show. That's how bad it was, right?
Well, his debut was maybe one of the darkest things we've seen on television in the last few years. The first episode where he makes his appearance in the flesh is that's an upsetting hour of television. It's really really dark to the point where, again, and I've been reading this comic since its debut. I was a day oneer because of my interest in the genre. But to see that brought to life in such vivid form was really really hard to take. And I knew exactly where it was going, having read the books and everything. But wow, that was hard to watch.
They just did a on the Comic Book Men episode that just passed. They did a all Walking Dead special.
Oh, nice.
And they were talking about number one, and there's a Negan, the one where they introduced Negan. It's just it's a special print with the black cover and just the bat and Lucille on the front of it. And a couple of the compendium books as well, right? Omnipedia is what they call them, or
Omnibus.
Yeah. So and the cash they were fetching for these things was amazing, right? So
it's become this huge industry. I mean, Robert Kirkman has become a very very wealthy person based on this.
Sure.
He's got a gold mine going.
Well, I mean, The Walking Dead is being called the number one show on television right
now. It's funny because I don't know if you guys saw it, but the ratings for the first episode that debuted the other day were not good.
Really?
They took a fair tumble. I think they said it was the worst season debuted since season 3.
Did you catch it?
I did. I watched it just right after it aired on Sunday night. I watched it before before I had to head to bed. But
yeah, I found it not up to par as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, I don't think it was the strongest debut. It was certainly, I get where they were going. I thought it was really well shot. I thought it was really well filmed. I thought it was one of the most interesting visually episodes they'd done in a while. But as far as advancing the plot and going places and giving me those moments that I've come to expect from the show, as far as, surprise and characters and going places, I felt like it was a bit of a standstill. Didn't really jump off of, for what they've been promising us is what they're calling the season is all out war. It really felt like a minor skirmish as opposed to an all out war from episode 1. Now, obviously, if you're going to burn 7 episodes and then have a winter break and then do another 7 or 8 episodes, you can burn a few episodes, but you think you want to come strong out of the gate. So
that's true. And I regret not having, like, they show it on AMC, the previous one, like they showed the finale, and then I could have watched the finale and then watched this one, and I kind of regret that I didn't, because I don't remember as much as I should have. But it was kind of like, when they, and spoilers for people who haven't seen it, but when they go to the door, as it were, and they've got their guns pointed at Negan and 6 of his lieutenants or 5 of his lieutenants, I always got the impression that Negan's group were like well entrenched all across like a vast area, and they weren't like, why, like, he's not stupid enough to put everybody in one place, right? Which is, I found really odd in that, that scene where they kind of sort of think they've got him quote unquote cornered, right?
Yeah.
I found that implausible.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting episode in the way they sort of paced it out. They were obviously they had this plan they were trying to execute, and they sort of follow along on that. And, there was some interesting sort of threads there, but I do find that they've managed to increase the scope of this world the last season or two, where, there's more than one community and there's lots of more characters.
Right, yeah.
But it was, you're right, I think it was hard to get a sense of scale and scope as far as how big the enemy territory is. And I think we got the impression from the end of the last season when we see Negan standing on his parapet saying, hey, we're going to go to all out war, and you see a bunch of bad guys standing there with guns, that he's got a lot of guys in his camp. But yeah, I don't think we really have a sense of, how far they spread, where their territory is, how close is it to the different.
But I mean, the buildup over the last 2 seasons, like, how they kind of like, you didn't see Negan for like, till I think the very last episode of the last year, right? If I'm not mistaken, right?
The year previous, yeah.
But there was a buildup of almost a whole season, or maybe a season and a half, of people saying, I am Negan, whatever. Yeah. Or wait till Negan finds out about this,
Yeah. No, I mean, he's been this larger than life specter in their world, and now he's, again, obviously his debut was what we talked about. It was a very, very dark turn, cost a couple of key players their lives, and sort of went from there and into this world of, things just getting darker and darker and darker for our heroes. Last season, like I say, I wouldn't advocate necessarily anybody who's, feeling down on themselves to sit and watch that as a marathon session. I don't think that could be very good for your health, but but again, some interesting moments mixed in there, some interesting character development as the show's, again, it's all overall, it's always been a strong show, but it'll be interesting to see how they turn that corner and we start to see our heroes rising up against this sort of the tyranny of Negan, who clearly is, it's a my way or the highway, or a baseball bat upside your head with barbed wire if you don't do what you're told. So it'll be interesting to see how they pull that back into our heroes actually making some gains this year.
So let's call it a night there. So hey, Jaime, if people want to get hold of you on the interwebs, where would they look?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithAHair.
And Jonathan, where would they find you?
I am JPK News on Twitter.
Alrighty, and as I usually say at the top of the show, I am Timitra, TIMMITRA on Twitter. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spockcast website at spockcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spockcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpockcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spockcast. You can find details on how to help us out on our website at spockcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
I got ahead of myself. I actually planned ahead and did the 2 of them this week.
Yeah, I see that.
Oh, I'm on the ball. I was thinking, Jaime should do the fact check for the one you and I did last week, just to rub our noses in it.
Yeah, I wasn't really prepared for that.
Oh, you got 7 in. How did you get episode 7 in here already?
Oh, I'm on it, man.
Wow.
Like I said, I was in the groove, so I was just like, all right.
Oh, that's right. I gotta look at.
Yeah, but nevertheless, even if I wasn't doing fact checking, I was shaking my fist while driving.
Were you
listening to the show a handful of times?
Oh yeah. What did we do? What did we do?
Oh, when so shaking the fist is something we say sort of jokingly when
shaking your fist at the phone.
We have various
yelling at your phone.
Yeah, it's either other hosts from the other podcast, or sometimes we know that we've probably made a terrible mistake. We don't know what the answer is, so I'm sure people are shaking their fist at the radio right now while they're listening.
Yeah.
In this case, the one that stuck out to me was the mirror universe stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't remember that until we looked it up. I was like, I thought I remembered something.
Okay, so here's your chance for redemption. So redeem us from our misadventure there. What's the deal there?
Well, I think it's only going to be half credit, but I remembered what I think you were thinking of with regards to Voyager.
Oh, with the Chakotay and the eye patch? What was that? I remembered something about him looking...
If it's the one I'm thinking of, it's the one where some copy of the Doctor, I think, is exhumed in the future, like some future society, and they're talking about the warship Voyager, and they have this whole museum about how Voyager came in and destroyed
that rings
everything.
a bell now, yeah.
Yeah, so they were all dark versions, but that's because their history had become corrupted. They didn't know the actual truth that their whole society was based on a lie.
See, you've got a better memory than me, man. I've forgotten about that.
Yeah, I don't have the slightest clue which episode that is, but I do distinctly remember pieces of that episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir, Bob.
So are we sliding out of the world of sci-fi from No Orville this week to Walking Dead?
That depends. Well, it depends on 2 things, right? First of all, we've been saving the banter about the Star Wars
trailer. Yeah.
Trailer for when Jaime gets back.
That's true.
And the second of all is now we've seen Blade Runner twice now. Yeah. Jaime, twice.
Yes. So,
but who keeps count, right?
So here's the most practical way of doing it, because I thought we were going to see both the original, I guess the final cut edition of Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049 last weekend. It didn't work out because, as it turns out, the Sci-Fi channel has done something really weird with it. So we had loaded the Sci-Fi channel onto our Roku device, and we watched about 5 minutes before we decided we'd need to watch it a different day. That was a huge mistake, because now that channel doesn't want to load at all on my Roku, and it's literally the only channel that does that.
Right.
And we said, let's get the apps. Nope, the apps don't have the Blade Runner movies. So that's kind of weird. Well, let me go to the website. Maybe the website has a more expanded view. No, it really doesn't. So it's just pack of what? I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? And we ran out of time on the weekend. So I think the most practical way to handle it is maybe we time box it to some certain amount of time, and then I can step away from the microphone so I don't get spoiled on it, and then you can Slack me when it's time for me to come back.
Oh, I see. Right,
you're going to hold it up for
booth while we decide what like the Newlywed Game. We'll put you in the soundproof booth and
yeah, we've already discussed it too. We don't have to go back into it unless you have some huge observations from your second viewing.
Just that I completely forgot a couple of major plot points, but that's
the parts you slept through the first time.
Yeah, no, that too. I didn't sleep through this time. This was the good thing about it, right? So, but yeah, it was weird. It was IMAX in 2D, but Ultramax in 3D. So we saw it in 2D, which is fine. I eventually did want to see it in 2D at some point, but so you get the whole IMAX-y, giant, big giant heads, right? Or you get the 3D, really cool looking snowflakes and ash and stuff falling down all around you, right? Kind of thing, right? So I definitely recommend if people are going to go see it in 3D, unless it makes you vomit, I would recommend people see it in 3D for sure. But here's the thing, Jaime. I realize you're trying to bring your girlfriend into the fold, as it were. I'd actually be interested to see her opinion of the movie, having not seen the original movie, right? Because that's the rare bear egg right there.
Right.
Yeah, one of the sci-fi blogs I follow, actually, they took 2 of their millennial staffers and made them watch the original, and they were like, it was okay. Like, hey, screw you guys. Like, don't come at it from now. You can't come at it from now. Objectively, it's not as good as it was 35 years ago.
Right.
Like,
yeah, and like I said, when I watch it, I watched the final cut on my 4K TV here, and I don't even know what I'm watching in terms of resolution or whatever, because I'm sitting across the room from it. But when I watch it, the original movie, every single frame, you could freeze frame it and make it your desktop wallpaper on your computer, and you would not complain. Like, that's how well it was lit, shot, produced, everything, right? Whether or not the floating cars, which are clearly on hoists and stuff like that, work for you or not. I mean, and the fact that every single sci-fi movie has stolen from this original idea, right? In terms of looking at it, though. You can't watch any sci-fi TV show today. If you watch a sci-fi TV show today, and like the cups are perfectly clean and all the sets are polished smooth, you're like, that's totally fake, right? And that's because of the influence of Blade Runner and Ridley Scott's interpretation of that, and the Aliens movie, and James Cameron stuff as well, right? So, anyway, cool. What's interesting too is that I kind of wonder, you kind of get lost in the new movie in terms of what's practical effects and what's CGI. There's a lot of kind of mixture there. So
when you say get lost, I thought you were meant because it's 3 hours long.
Well, that too. It's the fortunate thing about having an Apple Watch is you can just flick your wrist and it lights up and you can see what time it is, right? Without, annoying too many people. Even as you reach for popcorn, it lights up, kind of thing. But it was. I guess like I said though, what I do when I see a movie like this that I really, really, really want to see, and I do the la 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 thing with my fingers in the ears, I don't even look at how long it is or whatever, and I try not to watch any interviews with the actors. And
I think it was the most interesting thing of watching it was, obviously, you and I are close enough to a generation to be together, but bringing Xavier, who's 14,
right,
and I said, so what'd you think? And he said, it's the best movie I've seen all year.
Really? Wow.
And I said, okay, cool. So let's go through what you've seen this year. And I said, you saw Guardians of the Galaxy 2. He's like, yeah, that was good, but this was better. I said, okay, well, you saw, Dunkirk.
Rogue One.
Well, no, that was last year, but I said, you saw Dunkirk this year. Like, that's a fabulous movie. And he's like, it's close. That's probably the closest, but this was better. I was like, wow, that's all right. Like, if it can hold the attention for 3 hours, and like we talked about 2 weeks ago, it's slow at times. Like, it's really paced and measured. It's not like, nonstop.
It's like a novel. It's like reading a novel, right?
Yeah, it's not nonstop action, which you'd think a 14-year-old would like. But then he liked Arrival too. So I think Denis Villeneuve has a little bit of a magic touch that he can make those kind of movies where you're engrossed even if you're not being bombarded with action. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy is the complete antithesis of this, right? It's just never stops.
Yeah. I
mean, it's great. It's absolutely
or the Transformer
great.
movies. Those Transformer movies, I don't care. They put me to sleep when I'm wide awake, because there's just so much going on. You just cannot pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, Guardians is actually, it's more the wit, right? Like, it's just nonstop, very rapid.
No, I'm talking about Transformers,
The Transformers is like, there's just stuff exploding every 5 seconds. But the fact that he liked it, the fact that he had such a strong reaction made me think like, this is something special. This is something, he's done a really good job here with this film.
Yeah, I kind of wonder too, because Xavier just watched the original Blade Runner with me like not even 6 months ago, right?
Yeah.
So, and I never did really get a follow-up conversation with him about that one, right? So,
yeah, he liked that one. He liked The Matrix more. He said you showed him The Matrix, and he liked that one.
Oh, did I?
Yes. He said he saw it on a CRT TV at the cottage, and he'd like to see it. He'd not like to see it in HD, please.
Yeah. Well, I told him that the reason I bought a DVD player was because of The Matrix, right?
Yeah.
Just plain and simple.
Yep. I think that was one of the first obligatory DVDs you had to buy, right?
All right. By the way, I was watching something on TV the other day, and I gotta find out where it was, or what show it was, Jaime. But the guy actually said "and scene."
A-N-D and scene.
Yes, not and.
We were having a discussion as to what the proper way to say that was. It's like
I get it from Amy Poehler on Saturday Night Live, right? Because they always did it there. But what do you think, Jonathan? You get to weigh in on and.
Didn't John Lovitz do that with the when he was doing the great actor
probably.
And scene? Thank you.
Yeah, that may be where it comes from.
Yeah,
but it's an improv thing as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing about The Walking Dead, I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about The Walking Dead today, but, if it wasn't for The Walking Dead, we wouldn't have Shaniko, Mark, and Green, and we wouldn't have Discovery.
That's it.
There you go.
Yep.
True.
There's the tie-in. All right, folks.
Good talking to you guys.
Yeah, that was fun.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
See you guys.